Hi there, Isha here, and welcome to The Higher Life, where we take concepts that are considered esoteric, spiritual, and new age and unpack how these can be applied practically to greatly improve the quality of your life. And really all the education here at The Higher Life, it's about helping you as a human being to lead a really enriching daily life. The work here is not about escaping your humanity or looking to live in a way that doesn't allow you just to be in your everyday ordinary life as yourself, as your ego self, as some of us may understand it. Being the person that you've been born with, the personality that you've been born into, the body that you've been born into. I mean, we really want to have this adventure as a human being. And I liken it a bit to going backpacking for the first time when you're young and you want to travel the world, because some part of you just understands that it's going to be an adventure and you're going to have these new experiences that you wouldn't have if you stayed at home. And of course, I mean, I myself have done many adventures like this over my lifetime. There are always times along that adventure where you're having really tough time, you're suffering, things go wrong, you are immature and you don't feel equipped to deal with what's happening in front of you, and you want to go home. I mean, who doesn't want to go home when things get really tough, back to what you know, for that sense of stability and security? And who's to say that we don't have that same experience as spiritual beings on our human journey, that we're off on this human adventure, but when the suffering starts, we want to go home. And that home, that is that wholeness, that desire to go back into that non-duality where we are not a single separate human being having a human experience. We've gone back into that full sense of our own spiritual nature. I get that. Like, I understand how there are so many teachings out there that are all about living without suffering and returning back to our wholeness. But then on the other hand, I mean, if you told that to that 22-year-old backpacker, do you want to go home now and cut the adventure short because you're suffering, and if you return home, there's a way that you can just be happy and not have to go through all of this? I think that most of those 22-year-olds would probably stick it out, because the adventure is offering something different to that. And I think as a human being, if we really are spiritual beings having a human experience, we're here for the adventure. We're not here for a singular outcome, like to experience happiness the whole time or bliss or any of these things. We're here to have a story. And what I want to offer you here through The Higher Life is a toolkit, a way of upskilling yourself as a human being so you can truly enjoy the adventure that you've chosen to undertake. I also think that we've reached a period in human evolution where this is just where we're at. We have moved out of a very material experience of being human, and we have entered into what I would call the age of psychology, where the experience of being human is now happening at a level of psychology, and we're wanting to understand our experience through the mind and how the mind shapes our experiences, and how we can have a depowering experience of our mind and an empowering experience of our mind. There are different ways of living through the mind that give you a different experience of your daily life. And that's what I've been exploring in my journey. I think I did start out with, I just want to be happier, I just want to have a better life. And I think that was just absolutely rooted in false perceptions of what life is about that I had been conditioned into growing up in middle class Australia, where we were really stuck in that material perspective where you just got a good job, you got married, if you had a big house, all these things were a symbol of happiness, and success, and success would then be the source of happiness, which as we've entered into the psychological and emotional reality or realms, we realize that that's a very limited way of viewing being human, and it doesn't actually generate the outcome that we had believed it would. So now we're in this psychological realm, and we're talking all about well-being of the mind. And I do think, if I understand the non-dual approach to life in a certain way, there's some of that's been driven, the non-dual approach has been driven by this need for clarity of mind and being able to live through our mind in a way that is truly empowering. But I'd like to sort of stay not in the separate self, but in the human experience, which is perceived as a separate self. So I'd like to really embrace and engage and have fun on my human journey and understand that suffering is a part of that, and not want to escape it or deny it or talk myself out of it, or leave it here and return home to a more blissful or sort of pure happiness state. And even that sense of the non-I, we lose a lot of the adventure. However, I do think it's extremely helpful when you're really in a place of suffering and you're over-attached to this separate I, that you can return back into that wholeness, that sense of an I that is not defined, that is completely fluid. Go back into the ocean if you're too attached to the wave. I know they use that wave ocean metaphor quite a bit. So today I want to talk about what is personal power in relation to the journey that I have just talked about. How can we live a high quality, enriching daily life using our personal power in a more effective way? Well, the first thing is we need to understand what personal power is in this context. And I think, to put it very simply, I see it as when a thought arises in us, we can choose in that moment whether we focus on that thought and give energy to it. And if we start to energize the thought, we'll usually take action based on that thought being true or real for us in that moment. So for example, I have to study more, or I'm a bad student. That thought can arise in you in a particular moment in time. Maybe you've got some bad test results, maybe people in your class are doing better. I mean, this is just a vague example. That thought arises, I'm a bad student. Okay, now if you choose to focus on that, so your attention, you've noticed the thought, it's there, you start to focus on it, that thought is getting energy, it's actually heating up. And what it's doing, it's saying, act on me, act on me. I'm a bad student, therefore I believe that, so I'm going to act on that, and therefore take action out in my material life based on that being true. So I might sign up for a course. Now, in some instances, that may serve your highest self. It may be a good use of your energy. But in many instances, you haven't actually unpacked the thought enough. If you've chosen to actually focus on it, attach to it, and you're giving energy to it, now would be the time to think, is that really true? You know, am I a bad student? Or is this simply just a reactive, impulsive thought that has arisen in me based on a stressful moment that I'm having in my day, which is often where thoughts arise from. Right? They're very reactionary and often not true, but they can lead us down entire years of our life, right? You might sign up for a course that takes 2 years of your life. That's 2 years of your life that you're giving energy to a course that may not have actually been the truth at the time. Now, you might enjoy the course, but many people that I have coached over the years have made decisions like this based on a belief that they have given, or a thought that they have given energy to so much that it's become a belief, that they actually then live their life through that belief being true without ever questioning it. So in this instance, you may not have enjoyed the subject matter. You may have had a teacher that didn't really help you understand the material well. You may have been having troubles at home. You may be in a particular phase of your life where studying is not a high priority. Gosh, there are so many reasons why you might get bad marks, or why people in your class might be doing better. And I'm just using an example. Another one that is close to home for me is I'm not doing well as a mother. I mean, I used to have that thought so many times in the early days, and even now with teenage kids, you know, that thought arises in me daily about, you know, I'm not strict enough, or it's my fault that this is happening. And that's because I live in a time in history where there's a lot of awareness and research and expert opinion on the impact of parents on their children. And we live in a world where children have access to a life that we didn't have access to when I was young. So it's very unfamiliar territory. So this is a loaded territory for beliefs showing up, or thoughts showing up all the time that want to become beliefs. Think about every thought wants to be a star in your life. Every thought wants to become a belief, because once you've energized a thought enough and it becomes true, it becomes a belief to you, you'll live your life through it. And that thought has now having a whole life. You've manifested it out into your world, and that thought is having her or his chapter in your life, and that thought has won. Now, of course, if it's an inspiring thought, a thought that serves your higher self, or it's, it's rewarding you in some way that is really wholesome and enriching, okay. But, often it's not. Often they're anxiety-driven thoughts. They're thoughts that diminish your spirit, your soul, and you'll take them and energize them to the point that they become a belief, and then you'll live your life through that belief for substantial periods of time. And of course, that's all part of the adventure. However, it can be an incorrect use of your energy. And when we start to do that on a collective level, we start to use our energy incorrectly collectively, there is a real impact in the shared environment. And we see that because we are living now in an era where there have been thoughts that keep arising about achievement, about progress, about status, about consumption. They have become really strong, powerful collective beliefs, like I am successful when my lifestyle looks like this, which has had us with the belief that lifestyle is our top priority. And then chasing that lifestyle and living our life through that belief means that we make choices in our daily life that aren't respectful of our energy, of the environment. They're not respectful of our children's well-being because we're modeling a way of life that's unsustainable. I mean, most people watching this video get where I'm going with this. So it's important that we start to challenge and use our personal power wisely when that thought arises in us, and to actually confront the thought head on and go, is this real for me? Is this thought useful? Where has this thought come from? I need to unpack, sit and contemplate this thought before I choose to energize it through taking action, before I allow it to become a belief. Every thought requires real contemplation. It needs to be challenged. And there'll be many thoughts that come and go that don't even catch our attention. I'm talking about the ones that do catch your attention, because these are usually charged. There's a charge in them, and that's why they attract your attention. They could be inspiring, or they could be a fear-based thought, but both are equally charged. And if they're charged, we really need to stop, pause, take a breath, and really consider, do I want to energize this thought? And that is your point of personal power, because personal power is the source of all our creativity. What we choose to give energy to is what we create in the world out there. So it all begins with the thought that has arisen within us. Now, this is a really important but I think powerful and very subtle discernment. We do not create our thoughts. We do not create a thought through thinking. Thoughts arise in our consciousness or our awareness, and we energize them. It's a very different process that actually goes out into manifesting. And that's why a lot of people get, they do all these manifestation workshops, and they're like, it's not working, because it's based on the false notion that you can create a thought, give energy to it, and make it happen. No, the thought will arise, and then you energize that thought. And more often, thoughts that arise in us are thoughts from somewhere that is not really personal. They're impersonal, but we make them personal. And that's why I call it personal power, because it's your point. It's the point in which you take something that is impersonal and make it personal. And in doing that, you empower it to become a driver in your life. So being able to understand personal power as that specific point where you choose to focus on a thought and make it real for you, then you really have access to that personal power no matter what kind of life you're living. It doesn't matter if the conditions in your external life appear to be very disempowering, you still have access to that personal power. You can still transform your life, because how you choose to think, or the thoughts that you energize about your situation, will radically impact the experience you have of that situation. So if I'm in a period of non-employment and I choose to energize a thought that I'm a failure because I'm not employed, I will have the experience of being a failure in my life. It's guaranteed. But if I'm in a period of non-employment and my belief is this is time to be at ease with myself in my life, and just to conserve my energy and to be open to the unknown, I will experience myself during this period of non-employment as a contemplative, curious, and experiential person, and that will radically shift the quality of my experience. So this is just such a beautiful way of being the artist in your life. You're not controlling the conditions. You're not manifesting how you think your life should look, because that's often manifested out of poor thoughts, poor intentions, which are all about, I need to be like this in order to feel this way. Whereas when we have a pure intention, it's, I'm really curious about this and I'm going to follow it through, because I think there's an adventure waiting to happen there. And however it turns out, whether there's suffering or not, I'm up for this particular adventure and I'm willing to stick it out and see how it ends up without an attachment to what I should get out of it. And this is genuinely the path of personal empowerment, to view your human experience as an adventure, that the power that you have is when you choose to make something impersonal personal, and to live through that belief and make a life out of it. And knowing that this is a very fluid experience means that you can energize a thought, live through it, and then let it go and energize a different one. Or you can choose to let thoughts pass you by for long periods of time and really conserve your energy and be very high quality in what thoughts you choose to energize, and therefore what kind of material life you choose to manifest. So I really hope this has been helpful. In these episodes, I just like to unpack a concept that I know is floating out there and really look at how you can apply it practically in your life. So in this instance, it's really about allowing thoughts to arise, taking the time and practicing the pause, practicing the contemplation. Ask the question, where does this thought come from? What does this thought want from me? Is this thought serving me in some sort of way? When did this thought first become, clear to me? Because then it might give you information as to where you were at that time and what was going on for you, and that can help you qualify whether it's a thought that you should give any more time to or not. We become a lot slower, a lot more contemplative, and a lot more discerning when you actually live your life in this way practically. But it does ask you then to slow down and to give yourself time to qualify your thoughts before you choose to energize them. And that then, of course, radically changes the way we show up in our life. And if we're doing that collectively, we'll see a whole slowing down of the human species. We'll see the progress mind evolve into a more contemplative, high potential mind. We'll see a softening in terms of how we relate to ourselves and others in our material experience. And we'll see the reduction in things like consumption, energy abuse, and all those things that are really creating unnecessary suffering as a collective. So I think that's what's so beautiful about these teachings. It's a personal path to global prosperity. I can never get tired of saying that. This is the way that you and I in our personal lives, no matter what we choose to do practically, can really facilitate a global prosperity. And I think that's what we want as a species. We don't all want to just be personally happy. We want to experience a systemic happiness, a systemic prosperity, where we have come together and we have found this synergy in which everybody is thriving. I mean, what a beautiful performance. So what a beautiful way to finish your adventure, and what a beautiful outcome for any kind of adventure, that there is this shared richness that comes from your personal contribution to the larger experience. So if you love this work, or you're interested in walking the path of personal empowerment, definitely check out the Academy, higherlifeacademy.com, where there are a range of courses that can really kickstart your process. Or you can watch some episodes at Higher Life TV on YouTube, or listen to Higher Life Radio. We have so many different ways of accessing this material. But until then, take care and love life.